that does it. We have our Super Bowl recap episode coming today, and the big bad wolf, the big villain, and the Kansas City Chiefs won back to back. Corstian, I know, is undoubtedly upset about this. I
Yes.
personally wanted San Francisco to win. Please see our latest episode on that. But what a game! Absolute clinic. Like the first half was a very defensive slugfest, so a lot of the casuals out there and a lot of my friends I was watching it with did not like the game at all. Thought it was very
Hmm.
dry. But the second half proved to be well worth the wait, well worth those who like continue watching the game. I absolutely enjoyed it from start to finish. Um, the only thing I didn't like about the Super Bowl was the unfortunate injury to Dre Greenlaw. I thought that
Hmm.
was horrible timing. I felt so bad for him because like if you could tear your Achilles, like just jumping out up and down, getting pumped for your team, like about to get on the field, that's
Hmm.
just absolute. And like I know one of my friends was mentioning, oh wait, he's not actually lying on the card. This may be a good sign. I'm like, dude, it's never a good sign when the card's brought out. So,
Hmm.
um, I was just absolutely devastated for him. To me, just watching it as as guys who watch football closely, like, I thought that was a huge difference in the game, him not being there,
Hmm.
and how that affected San Francisco's defense against Kansas City. There were a bunch of
Hmm.
other stuff, like, San Francisco could have won this game too. Like,
Hmm.
it really was a 50-50 toss-up, but, um, I'll stop here. Corsair, what did you think of the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I thought. I mean, overall, it was a really good game. I think we saw a lot of like big plays on both sides of the ball. Um, I think some of the guys I expected to kind of like step up or at least play big roles for the 49ers uh did ring true, and then same with, I mean, with the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, but on that 49ers side, you had Christian McCaffrey. Obviously, he's playing great football there, and then I was saying that like Nick Bosa would be like a pivotal part, I think, in a if you know if the 49ers are to win, he would be a pivotal part of that, and at least on the defensive side of the ball, he did a really good job. I think that even if the 49ers win, he probably doesn't win Super Bowl MVP, but I think he'd be close in it with just how good of a game he had in terms of like, containing the run, containing Patrick Mahomes from like scrambling too far outside and kind of just limiting uh just the range that Patrick Mahomes is able to play. And then you kind of saw that as like resulting in the 49ers defense pretty much locking up the Chiefs for a majority of the game. Obviously a couple other key plays happened, but I think he was a you know, big factor in how well they played. But I think it was, sure, I mean, like Drake Greenlaw getting hurt was a huge blow, but I think ultimately coaching is kind of what costed them the game, which is unfortunate because a lot of players I mean, even on both sides, players are really balling out, and so I think either way it would have been an unfortunate loss for the other, but I really do think it comes down to coaching with just some of the play calling that opened up in the third quarter for the 49ers.
Yeah, just a quick stat on Bosa. He had the most amount of pressures in the game on both sides. He had 12.
Hmm.
Um, And I think there's only like two plays where I thought he could have taken a better angle to try and
Hmm.
contain Mahomes. Because you saw in like some of the Mahomes' scrambles to his side, like it's because like Bosa took a classic pass rushing angle, and he can't do that against Mahomes. You have to play like a contain, and he did a good job of this. Like
Hmm.
there were times like you would play QB contain to force Mahomes to like see that there's a gap between him and the D tackle. But Bosa wanted that to happen, and he closed that gap quickly. Like he
Hmm.
intentionally left that gap open so Mahomes would go because he knew Mahomes would go there, and that's how he got a lot of his pressures. And I thought he did a really good job. To your point too, I almost thought the Chiefs had no chance in that game when I saw the way Bosa pressured because I'm like, okay, they have a beat on how Patrick Mahomes likes to get out of the pocket and keep him in the pocket where he doesn't want to be. That's a huge sign. But just a quick point on coaching, I also noticed that too. I noticed like a couple key pivotal plays on like third and fourth down when the Chiefs would run like man zone indicators in motion,
Mhm.
and by the time like San Francisco like went all out with the blitz, I knew they lost because that signaled to me like they didn't think they can get there with their front four, which was keeping them in the game. And once Mahomes knows you're blitzing, he's gonna throw his hot route immediately. So like that and that offense, it's Rice. And when you have Rice going with like a set of picks like supporting him to go on the other side of the field, like they're gonna get first downs every time, and that's all the difference in it takes in the Super Bowl. So I did also think coaching played a role. On the offensive side of the ball, I think when the 49ers had those three and outs, and I think it was in the third quarter.
Mhm.
After the Chiefs had like a field goal, and even after like the muff punt, which was I'm not even gonna blame that on Shanahan. That's like I'm not even gonna blame that on the players. That's just a freak play
Mhm.
where it hits some guy who was trying to block um, and prevent his punt returner from getting blasted. The football hits him, and like that was just unlucky on the 49ers side.
Mhm.
But back to my point on like the three possessions where the where three consecutive possessions where the 49ers stalled out. I think they called 8 pass plays and 1 run play.
Mhm.
And the run with Christian McCaffrey was working. They were getting like 5 or 6 yards on that. And I was just shocked because like if San Francisco had won that game, their MVP would be Christian McCaffrey
Mhm.
because he scored the only touchdown for them. And he was like running. He had like I think 80 or 90 plus yards on the game. Um,
Mhm.
I'm gonna do a quick double check on that. He had 80 yards. He had 80 yards,
Mhm.
and which is really good. And he had 30 total touches, but like he could. This is the game you got to give him 40, especially in
Mhm.
that situation. Like you want your best player touching the ball like at least 2 times in a 4 down series,
Mhm.
right? And to pass it on all 3 downs, I get it. I'm not knocking Brock Purdy on it, but use your best player. Use your best player in some capacity. And I just think whether they're trying to feed the narrative that Brock Purdy is an elite passer or just try to keep up with the aerial assault that like the Chiefs have found their rhythm in at that moment of the game, I was just extremely disappointed to see that because you have Trent Williams, you have Juszczyk, and I get Kittle's out, but like you have good enough blockers to run like your scheme, and that was just really disappointing to see
Mhm.
for me from a coaching perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think yeah, it was kind of just like they strayed away from what made their team so elite, which was, that Christian McCaffrey threat that they had. But then also I think like they were aggressive at the wrong times where like your defense was playing pretty good on their 4 or 5 man rushes, and then they do an all-out blitz, which would result in like a big play from the Chiefs, which I think was like misplaced aggressiveness. And then from the offensive side, I think that last offensive drive they had in the fourth quarter, they should have gone for it on fourth down, and tried to extend. I don't think because I think they should have known that.
Oh,
Um,
you're talking about after the pass deflection when McDuffie came on a blitz.
mhm. Yeah, where it's like I feel like you almost just have to go for it there, just because the Chiefs are going to be able to drive down. Like I saw how much time is on the clock, and I'm like, Chiefs either win this right here, or this goes to overtime. 49ers will not win in the fourth quarter. Once I saw the Chiefs get the ball in that last drive of theirs, and then and then once I saw the field goal go through on that first overtime drive by the 49ers, I'm like, this is Chiefs game like 99% right now, and I mean, it was true, and so I think it was a big lack of aggressiveness that I think kind of shown up time and time again in terms of the Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan, but um, like I feel like yeah, I mean, like the players they did what they were supposed to do. Obviously, there's a few misplays and whatnot, but like overall, the players played great. But it was just like poor play design and poor play calling and aggressiveness by the 49ers coaching staff that put them in situations that really just gave put the ball in the Chiefs' court to win the game, which obviously is not something you want to do.
Yeah, and then keeping in mind, like Debo had like cramped up, and I think his
Mhm.
hamstring went out, and then George Kittle had that awful shoulder injury.
Mhm.
It's like the Niners can't escape like injuries for their life.
Mhm.
It seems like,
Yeah.
and Feliciano went down too, their guard.
Mhm.
But you make a great point there. I thought Shanahan could have definitely helped out on that third down play call I was talking about where McDuffie came free on the blitz.
Mhm.
Um, the players also had a gap in the blocking team because I think Kittle and like a guard like double teamed a guy,
Mhm.
um, and that caused McDuffie to roam free. Otherwise, they could have picked up that blitz, and then uh, Purdy could have had his hot route there. But
Mhm.
also, like it was thrown against Snead, so that would have been a tough throw anyway.
Mhm.
Um, that's I don't mind that strategy because if you know the Chiefs are in a rhythm now and gonna score it, like you give yourself a chance to answer.
Mhm.
And like Shanahan had that logic when he was explaining why he took the ball first in overtime. To be honest, I don't really care that like the 49ers took the ball first or second.
Mhm.
Like when it comes down to it in overtime, you have to stop Mahomes. Whether
Mhm.
it's like they get the ball first or second. And at that point, they just couldn't stop him. He went 8 for 8 in overtime. Like I think his fourth quarter, he had 162 yards and a touchdown. He was just ballistic. And like
Mhm.
the Niners didn't really stop him on his last possession either in
Mhm.
regulation. They just ran out of time. They just ran out of time and they had to
Mhm.
kick the field goal because think about the back shoulder to Kelsey. Um, that happened with like under 20 seconds left, I think.
Mhm.
And they just didn't have enough time to like put together a touchdown drive at that point. So like I hear you on that fourth down. There was also a couple touchdowns where like they had it schemed up and it was great play design, but like Chris Jones blew it up. Like
Mhm.
there are like two or three plays where you see like Chris Jones just like overwhelming the tackle in the second half, getting right in the Brock Purdy's lap, and that literally was the reason why he couldn't complete the pass down the field.
Mhm.
I'm not even gonna blame Brock Purdy for that. Like that is just elite defensive end play, and like Chris Jones always does this in the biggest moments. You think about the Josh Allen play where he could have had
Mhm.
Shakir in the end zone. When they're I think they were driving to kick the field goal or like had the touchdown.
Mhm.
Um, and Chris Jones blew that play up, drove Dawkins right into Josh Allen's lap. He he had an impact against the Ravens in that game, um, and he just always seems to rise up in the biggest moments. And he like single handedly prevented the Niners from getting three additional touchdowns, in my opinion. So
Mhm.
like I'm not even gonna blame the fact that Brock Purdy couldn't throw those touchdowns because even Tom Brady, I don't think was one of the best greatest pocket passers in the league.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think he would have been able to throw an accurate ball in that situation. So like, I can't blame Brock Purdy for this.
Mhm.
Like, it's it was just I think it's more of a situation where like there are a couple plays that didn't go the Niners' way. You see the injuries, and then you saw Mahomes elevate his game. Kelsey elevated his game in the second half, and that
Mhm.
made the difference.
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, like if you're on Burks, you're in a tough situation. And like Warner, like on that play where he allowed Kelsey to go like for 20 yards, like he's running behind Kelsey and trying to navigate picks there. Like she's run a lot of pick routes to help swing their guys free. And even if you're in man coverage, you're not going to stop that. So like, I mean, what could the Niners have done differently? Probably not telegraph that they're in man coverage, or like blitz, like telegraph their blitzes, because when you do that to Mahomes, like he instantly knows, oh, it's man coverage.
Mhm.
I have this hot route. I know where my reads are, and he can make his decision much quicker and anticipate Patori. Whereas if you change up your coverage pre and post snap, show your blitzing, then suddenly drop out, even if Mahomes knows you're dropping out, you give yourself a chance because you don't give these easy
Mhm.
reads. He has to decipher what type of zone it is, like even if you start off on blitz perspective or not. So um, it's like those kind of things. If the Niners leaned on that more, I think they would have given themselves a better shot,
Mhm.
like in that second half. Um, but by no means did they blatantly lose the game, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, Even that overtime call, I would give Matt Nagy a lot of slack, but that play to swing Hardman free on a quick route,
Hmm.
that was great. That was a great
Yeah.
play call because if you think about the fourth down where Mahomes had to where he had a triple option basically. He could have handed it in the shotgun to Pacheco.
Hmm.
Like, because when I saw the play, I'm like, why are they lining up in shotgun? They could have easily
Hmm.
done the tush push or like
Yeah.
give it to Pacheco because their offense leans on Pacheco. But they went in the shotgun because they wanted to throw it and put it in Mahomes' hands.
Hmm.
So you could have handed it off to Pacheco. He made the right read in all the situations. He could have handed it off to Pacheco, kept it himself, or thrown it to Kelsey in the flat. Kelsey got taken away. Niners were leaning on the run. They had done a great job on Pacheco all game. And that was the one time Mahomes ran. And I found myself thinking, of
Hmm.
course, like who's the one guy you got to stop on that offense? It's Mahomes. Like you know, at some point he's gonna pull the run out of his bag because he always has those two or three runs that are just backbreakers, like
Hmm.
10 plus yards, 15 plus yards in the highest moments. And I'm like, for the Niners, how do you not prepare for that? So, um, yeah, I thought seeing that play call and then like running a complimentary play off of that in overtime to win the Super Bowl using like a lesser known guy, McCole Hardman, great
Hmm.
strategy because like McCole, you're not going to expect him to win one on one in man coverage against Charterius Ward or something like that.
Hmm.
But you didn't have to. You put him in motion because his speed is a factor. So you have to make a quick decision, quick call. Um, and they had to guard Kelsey on that play. Like
Hmm.
the outside cornerback had to guard Kelsey, ends up wide open. So like I thought that sequencing and play calling to what they did in those pivotal moments of the games, well done by the Chiefs. Really well
Hmm.
done. It showed like they're probably a well-rounded team that found themselves at the right time. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So, did you have any other thoughts like covering the Super Bowl?
um. Well, that was kind of like most of it. And then you covered a lot with like the play calling, at least at the beginning of the third quarter, which I thought was a big thing too to notice.
Yeah, and it's so surprising to me because like
Hmm.
they they called really good play, like the trick play,
Hmm.
well done, well designed. Like that was a great play call, and it's just
Hmm.
like why not use McCaffrey in more and more situations? Like the I don't think the Niners ran one play with like Debo as the running back and McCaffrey in the
Hmm.
slot. Like that's
They,
what
they
makes
they
them
had like
unique.
one, but like yeah, I do remember one like that, but then it wasn't that. It was like maybe like a 1-2 yard gain, and so I think they kind of went away from that. And then yeah, and also it felt like I like Kittle. Sure, he got injured in the game, but like it was late in the game, and it just felt like he didn't really have much of like a focal point within the offense like earlier on
Except for
when.
that fourth down catch. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, I hear it. I think they should have definitely lean on Kittle more
Hmm.
because um I wasn't surprised that Ayuk and Samuel didn't have their best receiving games.
Hmm.
Like we knew that coming in. Like just the Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie,
Hmm.
like they're all pro cornerbacks for a reason. You're not going to get much yardage on them. So,
Hmm.
like we knew that coming in, and we talked about it. We talked about McCaffrey and George Kittle being the focal points.
Hmm.
Um, I think one thing that can't get overlooked is I briefly talked about Spagnuolo's defense. I've been talking about their defense since they beat the Bengals in that playoff game last year for the AFC Championship game. And when we were previewing this team this season, we said watch out for this defense because they were coming. They
Hmm.
had all these young pieces, and the fact that Spagnuolo has not been considered for a head coaching job is surprising. He's one of the best defensive coordinators in the game, especially in these big moments. Like you think about what he did against the undefeated Patriots. You think about like the way he's turned around this defense since like 2019.
Hmm.
It's ridiculous, man. And like as long as he's around and you have Andy Reid like continuing to develop this offense, like it's just crazy. Like they've had the most amount of turnover from their wide receivers since they traded Hill. They had the most amount of drop passes. Like Mahomes probably had his worst year statistically this season,
Hmm.
and they won back-to-back Super Bowls. That's just what shocks me about this team, man.
That's crazy.
Are you picking them to win the Super Bowl next year? I saw some of the
um,
odds, and San Francisco's the most favored to win, which I thought was absolutely surprising.
yeah, it'll like I'm just trying to think of like the NFC competition, I guess, is what you have 49ers obviously. Eagles, Cowboys are going to be in the running. Detroit, I hope, has another good season. Um,
I mean, with the Eagles and the Cowboys, they're gonna have some coordinator changes. So
mhm,
like, you need to see do they really improve drastically as a result of that? Because that was a
mhm,
big issue in my opinion, for at least for the Eagles and like their
yeah,
Cowboys defense. I like the Zimmer hire, um,
mhm,
but I think Detroit's more of a contender than those two right now,
yeah,
especially because they got all their coaches coming back. They're
mhm,
just continuing to add on to that offense and everything. So,
mhm.
but go ahead with the other contenders who you're thinking of.
Um, I think Packers could be good next year too. Actually, um, just like the guys gelling together, that much more, getting that much more experience. I think it could be a tight competition for the NFC North between the Packers and the Lions next season. I think it might be a really close race between the two of them. NFC South, I think again the Falcons could potentially be a team if they get like a big change in the quarterback in the draft or something. I think they're a team that could like be somewhat competitive, kind of like a Texans this year. Um,
I don't know about that though. Yeah, that's gonna be. You're asking a lot about Raheem Morris to pull that off. I don't know.
yeah.
I think that was more of like a they need to find the right talent to quarterback too. But
Mhm.
like at the same token, you saw Bryce Young this season.
Mhm.
He like I'm still high on him. I don't think you give up on a talent like Bryce Young, but they need to have a situation that's like degrees higher than Arthur Smith did, where like
Yeah.
you have all this talent and you're using it well. Texans did a good job with that. They had a good like diverse scheme, and they had Stroud, who's a difference.
Mhm.
So I what I'm
Yeah.
saying, trying to say is I don't think a difference maker at quarterback's enough for the Falcons. They Raheem Morris is going to have to find a scheme that works for.
Mhm.
And I like Zach Robinson. I actually liked him as a candidate the Bears were
Mhm.
considering. I like him. I just need to see it. But
Mhm.
you're right. You're right on the potential part. Falcons absolutely have the talent and potential to do it.
Mhm. Yeah. He's like they could honest like I think Bryce Young does would kill it with the Falcons right now, just with the fact that like the level of talent that he like upgrades to with the Falcons is like unbelievably great for him. Would be
And organizational stability.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Like where Carolina is basically where Detroit is without without the offensive talent like that they can just continuously draft
Mhm.
because they're not invested in that area. And
Yeah.
they're literally at the start of the Detroit rebuild without as much
Mhm.
talent. So it's gonna take them longer to build up
Mhm.
that team. Um,
Yeah.
I could see Tampa taking a leap, like if they're able to find a
Mhm.
suitable replacement for Canals. Um,
Mhm.
I think that played a huge part in like Baker Mayfield's like progress. Um,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
then
and then I think them
I
keeping Mike Evans is another big factor in if Tampa Bay can like repeat as a you know kind of the lead team in that division of theirs.
yeah, and I mean, who knows with the NFC West, like outside the Niners, like
Mhm.
for all we know, the Cardinals could be a playoff team next year. With the
Mhm.
way like Gannon has his guys playing, they need a talent influx. But like, you already got a number one option in McBride. You got Kyler Murray playing a lot better when he came back from the ACL, which I was shocked
Mhm.
by. And then like you have the Rams, few years removed from a Super Bowl. Seahawks, like I had touted them as like the division winner. Look how that panned out.
Mhm.
And um, I'm really high on McDonald as like a coach. I'm really
Mhm.
excited to see how that turns out. So I hear you. Detroit and Green Bay probably would be the two teams I'd worry about.
Mhm.
Um, but I yeah, I'd find it hard pressed to see like teams challenge the way San Francisco's built their team. right now.
Mhm. Yeah. But yeah, and then I guess on the AFC side though, in terms of Super Bowl contenders, obviously Chiefs are there. Um, I think a healthy Bengals team is better than a Bills team as of at least right now in this current state. Um,
Assuming they keep T. Yeah, I
yeah.
agree.
I mean, even if they miss out on T, I think they have enough. So I mean, guys, I think that, and Joe Burrow being Joe Burrow, I think that they can kind of go toe to toe regardless.
And they're probably gonna draft a couple guys too.
Mhm.
Like if T's gone, like that's I don't think they're gonna
Mhm.
leave that wide receiver room unaddressed. Um, but yeah, I mean, based on what we've seen with the Bengals versus the Bills, that's possible.
Mhm.
I still think the Bills have Super Bowl capabilities. Um,
Mhm.
like so, would I be surprised if the Bills only beat the Bengals? No, they're evenly par teams. Like
Mhm.
I don't think we should count out the Ravens
Mhm.
after the way that because they had the best defensive performance on the Chiefs in my opinion.
Mhm.
Um, it's just that their offense like didn't show up at all like for one Sunday. So I don't think in short, I I think there are enough teams that can I would take
Mhm.
the field against the Chiefs. And not just because um I hate the Chiefs. Not that. It's more so like it's just really hard to expect the Chiefs to repeat
Mhm.
this a third time with like
Mhm.
how lucky you need to be in that spot. And like
Mhm.
knock on wood, like Mahomes and Kelsey haven't had to deal with significant injuries like
Mhm.
during this run at all. If something happens like that, Kansas City's immediately out of it. Like I don't
Yeah.
care how good that defense is.
Mhm.
Like the reason why this Chiefs were a Super Bowl contender was because the defense was elite and they had Mahomes and Kelsey.
Mhm.
Like if you take one of those factors away somehow, like that just significantly eliminates their chances.
Mhm.
Um, because you saw like how bad they were on offense outside of Mahomes and Kelsey had a down year at that, and they
Mhm.
still won the Super Bowl. So like I think that speaks to the greatness of Mahomes. But do I think it's sustainable for a three-peat? No, because it hasn't been done in the league.
Mhm.
It hasn't. So for me, I would take the field.
Yeah.
Okay, we kind of addressed this somewhat when we were discussing like other teams, like when we think about who's going to be in the Super Bowl next year. But what factors do you think needs to happen for the Chiefs to repeat, which has never been done?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just like just drafting well is a big part of it because obviously when you win the Super Bowl, you don't have the greatest draft picks, but like you still need to like you still need to get your guys, get the good guys that you think will play good, kind of like that Detroit strategy that they had this last season where it may have felt like a reach, but they got their guys and it panned out for them. I think the Chiefs just got to keep doing that because I mean like guys won't like last forever. Like Travis Kelsey, he's getting older. Chris Jones, he's technically a free agent. He's slated to be a free agent unless they re-sign him. Um, and so it's like making sure you get new talent cycling in with some of your like key veterans, so that like you have good development chains that basically keep them from just dying in the cap. But I think that's kind of just like the most important thing because obviously you want to keep your superstars, and then outside of your superstars, you're kind of like middle of the pack players. Inevitably, you have to let some of them go, and then hopefully your rookies are able to rise up to the challenge and plug and play there.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I look at their 25 free agents right now. Um, Jones is somebody I would prioritize.
Hmm.
Um, But Snead is somebody I would prioritize because Snead is making under $1 million. Can you believe that? At 27, he's making under a million
Hmm.
bucks in the league. Like he's gonna have a huge payday. Um, like I anticipate Mahomes will take a pay cut to try and manage all of this.
Hmm.
Probably he probably realizes the situation. Um, but yeah, Donovan Smith is going on 31. Drew Tranquil, like he's 28. He's going in free agency. Um, Nick Allegretti was a huge role. Like and helping them out while Tooney's out. He's going for free agency. I wouldn't count on him coming back with the payday he might have. Um, obviously, we talked about McKinnon, um, but you see Willie Gay, Noddy, Mike Edwards. He's a guy I don't think they'll keep because he'll demand something. But Cole
Mhm.
Hartman, um, just a lot of guys on their roster, and um, I think for them, they need to focus on the tackle positions because I don't think they can go for another season of having Jawan Taylor go for that many penalties
Mhm.
and like go for that situation again. I think they really need to find some bookend tackles
Mhm.
to one prepare for the eventual leave of Donovan Smith, two to
Yeah.
get better production from Jawan Taylor, and then obviously the wide receivers. I think there's
Mhm.
enough in this class where like I can't believe like um I just blanked on his name from Oregon, Troy Franklin. Like
Mhm.
I can't believe Franklin and Keon Coleman are projected for the late first round. So
Mhm.
you think about them on the Chiefs, that's going to be significant. I've always been a huge fan of Justin Ross.
Mhm.
He's not had the greatest luck to the start of the season, but I think he can be a significant contributor on this Chiefs team.
Mhm.
The development of Rishi Rice, I don't think I'm still like on the. I don't think Rishi's a number one. I think he's a
Mhm.
very good two that's had a
Mhm.
lot of opportunities because he's playing offside Kelsey. But like if I'm the Chiefs, I'm doing everything I can to try and find a talented wide receiver one from the draft, so you can start to get both elite production
Mhm.
out of that receiver and Kelsey because we've
Mhm.
seen the effect that Tyreek Hill has had on Kelsey, and Kelsey's put up like otherworldly numbers in that situation.
Mhm.
So like if you think about adding that element to that offense, suddenly it's just like it doesn't matter if we talk about Buffalo, Cincinnati, or Baltimore.
Mhm.
Like there's no way you're stopping this explosive team on both sides of the ball in Kansas City. Because Mahomes has been doing this like where he's become like a savant of the game, like game managing. Like if you see like first or second year starter Mahomes, like with the recent draft picks they have, they pull out of Detroit with this receiving group. Look out. Look
Mhm.
out because there's nothing you can do. There's literally nothing you could do at that point.
Mhm.
Sorry, I rambled on and on there, but
No, no.
do you think they have like positions they need to address outside of their line and their wide receivers?
Um, I think it's a lot of it is just like just seeing like who your older like I guess key position players are that either are close to retirement, close to regressing, or are going to be expecting a big payday, and just like making sure prioritizing those guys in the draft. Even again, like I said, if it might be a reach a little bit, but you're getting the guy to be the replacement. I think that has to be Chiefs outside of actually retaining their guys. That has to be their number one priority. Um, and so like yeah, you know, like with Travis Kelsey, I do like the depth behind him, but obviously none of them are Travis Kelsey, and so it's like, how are you like, will they attempt to draft, guys maybe in the second or third round that they think could be an eventual replacement for Kelsey once he retires, or um yeah, even like I don't know all the ages of all their players right now off the top of my head, but even like I know they have a handful of guys on defense that are at the end of their contract, and it's like you'd like to keep them all, but it's hard to keep them all, and so it's like, making sure you're knowing which guys there you want to prioritize for re-signing in the future, and then before that even happens, you're drafting guys to start developing so that they can replace them. So like I feel like the linebacker core is really strong right now, but you lose one or two guys there, and all of a sudden you could have one of the weakest. That could be one of the weakest like just linebacker cores in the league, and obviously you don't want that. And so just making sure that their depth is good. I think they've done a really good job with their defensive line. I feel like in the past couple drafts, they've really taken their time in making sure that they get you know key key guys there. And so now it's like without necessarily losing too many defensive linemen, they've really had pretty seamless transitions and like having really good rotations throughout the season, which I think we saw in the playoffs how dominant that defensive line was. And then because I mean, within like the last like year, they lost like Frank Clark, who was kind of a bona fide kind of starter, for them for the past couple seasons, and
D
uh,
Ford. Yeah.
D40, and it feels like they lose these guys and they don't really like skip a beat in terms of their defensive line production just because I mean they have their elite guys there already in place, but then the guys they draft are also really good at stepping up and just being able to do that for all the other positions that they might be losing guys in will be super valuable and super important for them to maintain this kind of aura of having a dynasty.
Yeah, no, you mentioned on the line, Mike Dana had a great season this year. I would prioritize keeping him. Like Nadi's also there. Like if you
Mhm.
can keep him, keep him. But like the big guys, Chris Jones. Like
Mhm.
none of this matters if you can't sign Chris Jones. And then even Tranquil, I think, is um he's due to hit free agency. And then Willie Gay as well. So
Mhm.
I think if you keep the like four of those five guys, you're in pretty good shape.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously Snead and Jones are the priority, so you want to keep those guys.
Mhm.
But I hear you. That could be another area of the draft as well.
Mhm.
Um, I for like obviously health plays a large role here. Like and if they're able to complete the dynasty, um,
Mhm.
but they have like 85% of the roster already intact with their key spots of position players like dominant. Like you want to
Mhm.
have a dominant quarterback, receiver, like in defensive end and cornerback, which they do.
Mhm.
Now you need a dominant left tackle, so
Mhm.
you can give your quarterback as much time as possible. So and even with that said, Mahomes I think only took like 2 or 3 sacks the whole postseason,
Mhm.
which is unheard of. So like if that's their priority, like given the state of performance of their roster, like they're in absolute great shape. It's just help with this team.
Mhm.
Moving on to San Francisco. Um, they have the best top to bottom roster in the league. Top 11, bottom 11. Defense, so offensive defense, top 11 players.
Mhm.
What more can they do?
um, I think for them, like yeah, like you said, they have one of the best teams, top to bottom. Um, I think I don't know having I mean like better depth, I guess, is one thing because I think one thing we did talk about prior to the game actually was the fact that they're at least the 49ers defense, they have a lot of good starters, but then once you look past their starters, they do struggle a bit. And we kind of saw that with we kind of gauged that with the secondary last week and the fact that, not they weren't fully at 100%. And then we're looking at the guys who were going to be active for their secondary. And you're like, there was a lot of question marks there that I don't think either of us really knew how it was going to play out for the Super Bowl. So I think this having like quality guys, because I mean they drafted well, but I think it just the lack of depth was one thing that I think was killer for them. But then I think another thing that just comes with time is the development of Brock Purdy. He's only what like in his second season, and I think I mean, he's played phenomenal. But I think with more
The hate on
experience,
him through like X and like beyond is
hmm
insane to me. Like the guy's in the second year and he made reached the Super Bowl.
hmm yeah, yeah. And so I mean, he isn't perfect, which obviously isn't the expectation for him. But I think as like in like just him being able to make more reads, like making pre-snap adjustments, and just kind of understanding kind of how the game's flowing around him at this NFL speed when it comes to facing these better teams. I think it just becomes a skill that he gets because I remember there was a time where I think the Chiefs had like lined up in like a seemingly all like full blitz like zero cover zero type
Cover zero.
formation.
Yeah.
And they had called like Brock Purdy or someone had called a timeout just because it was like well Brock Purdy just couldn't get everything situated for their offense in time for that when you like with Patrick Mahomes with all his experience that he knows exactly what's coming. He knows how to set up his like blocking adjustments, and then he knows how to like set up the routes for his guys that will make sure they're open so that he can make those big plays that gash the 49ers defense literally every time they blitz. But so I think, I think that might be something the 49ers want to look into more is just like Brock Purdy's this understanding of blitzes and how to kind of set things up when like a blitz or an obvious blitzing situation happens so that uh they're not kind of scrambling in terms of like not knowing what they're going to do, and because obviously they have the personnel to overcome blitzes. It just I think Brock Purdy just has to learn how to deal with that without needing too much of that coach's help. But that's just a time thing. So if he can learn it, he can learn it.
Yeah, for me, I thought their offensive line was actually weaker than years past. Was my one worry with that team.
Hmm.
Um, so like seeing Chris Jones get into the backfield that quickly was pretty alarming to me. And
Hmm.
I don't think that's going to change when they go up against Detroit, like Green Bay, like Dallas, and Philadelphia. Like not as far as like who's the better team. It's more like matchups, like
Hmm.
offensive versus defensive lines. I think San Francisco, as currently constructed, is not equipped to handle those lines
Hmm.
at all. And I think the talent around them kind of masked that.
Hmm.
So if I'm San Francisco, I'm really rebuilding those lines, offensive and defensive, as much as I
Hmm.
can, because defense you'll need to have more bodies, like you mentioned. Um, Offense, you'll need to have more lines so you can protect Brock Purdy and he can do what he does. Because Brock Purdy from a clean pocket, amazing. And unlike Goff, he can create a lot, like even when it's not perfect, but
Hmm.
you don't want him doing that a ton. Like I saw so
Hmm.
many plays where like he'd have a defender in his lap and he's kind of like just chucking it and arming it, like
Hmm.
arcing the ball just to compensate for the fact that pressure got there so much more quickly than he
Hmm.
anticipated in the play call, and he would be inaccurate as a result.
Hmm.
And it wasn't his fault at all. Like that's just the line thing where I would prioritize like the inner, like losing Mike McGlinchey had an effect on this team,
Hmm.
uh, and I think outside of Trent Williams, I would rebuild that line as soon as possible. I would get Allegretti from the Chiefs. I would figure out like the Chiefs rebuilt that line in a year, like after
Hmm.
Patrick Mahomes lost that Super Bowl to Tampa. I would do the same thing if I'm San Francisco. Give Purdy a chance to be upright,
Hmm.
healthy, and like throwing the ball from clean
Hmm.
pockets. And I
Yeah.
think that's the big thing I would address. And then you talked about the cornerback. There's a lot of good corners coming out of the draft. I
Hmm.
think I think San Francisco would do well to do that, but that wasn't like a huge concern of mine. That was just like
Hmm.
considering like they had Richard Sherman, they don't have him anymore. They
Hmm.
had all these cornerbacks, but I think you could do. It doesn't hurt to build what you had. Like even Jair Brown from the
Hmm.
49ers, you saw what he could do as a rookie. I think you would do great to build that, and then
Hmm.
obviously maybe the inside linebacker because you don't know what's going to happen with Greenlaw
Hmm.
now that he
Yeah.
tore his Achilles. So you have to
Hmm.
factor that into consideration because the season's in
Hmm.
what 6 or 7 months. So um,
Hmm.
I would start at like the lines, linebacker, cornerback,
Hmm.
keep building. Try to anticipate that you're not going to have these amount of weapons for an extended amount of time. It's time to pay Brock Purdy and try to have some receivers there. I like some of the guys
Hmm.
behind Ayuk and Debo Samuel, but it doesn't help hurt to like
Hmm.
get more competition there. So
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and kind of going back to that 49ers line as well. Um, like I think like offensive line penalties was I think something really notable to me during the game from the 49ers where that really did kill a lot of the momentum on some drives that
and two of them were on Trent
otherwise.
Williams, which you never see.
Hmm. Yeah, and so it's like imagine they cleaned up some of those penalties. Like those could be game like the drives that won them the game just from the fact that it would have put them up more. It would have kept their momentum going strong. Uh, and just kept their offense out there. Where we obviously the goal is to have the Chiefs' offense out there as little as possible. And so I think that was just like a big thing because, I mean, if you look at the Chiefs' offensive line, right, like there's definitely ref bias involved with part of it. But I read somewhere that in like the last like four games or something like that, like the Chiefs have not had an offensive holding penalty called on them, um, which obviously is huge in terms of like drive success. Whether or not it's they should have had more penalties called them is one thing, but the fact that we see how the team is able to function when you're like limiting those holding penalties on an offense, and I mean like I've seen other teams where holding has been an issue, and it's an absolute drive killer. You could have a good team, but just like one guy who's like consistently holding just absolutely kills all momentum for your team, and you know
because
it,
you're off schedule now. Like you always want to be in like third and
Mhm.
second and sixth or fewer, like
Yeah,
to get their
he was
first win.
like he was like trying to get back from like a second and 20 or even like it's even like second and 15 or third and 15. Just it's so hard because or there's a big part of it that you want to get a big chunk back because obviously when you're at like second and 20 you're not expecting to do it all in one play, but even with like a 12-yard play you're still at third and 8, third and long still, which isn't ideal in the fact that you need basically two like 10 plus yard plays basically to work in your favor for one of those to mitigate one of those holding calls is uh just such a killer for a team.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, and I think we talked about a couple plays where like Chris Jones like goes into the lap of Brock Purdy, McDuffie batting down the ball in a crucial third and four, like because the 49ers didn't handle the blitz well.
Mm-hmm.
Like talent changes that. Talent
Mm-hmm.
like results in better communication and like fixing the line towards here and there. Like they need to work better on their blitz pickups.
Mm-hmm.
Bec- in anticipation for a team like the Chiefs because Spag like we saw this against Cleveland and we saw this against Kansas City for like the 49ers. When teams went like cover zero heavy and just said, I don't care how much of talent you have on this field, I'm going to trust my defenders to go one on one. And Cleveland had the talent to do it. Kansas City clearly had the talent to match up. Like it was a tough go for the 49ers. Like so how do you mitigate that? Better line play because now you can start to get McCaffrey more efficient touches. You can work the play action off of that because the line's doing a great job in the run game.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it's time to go in those must pass situations, the line has a good idea of what the rush angles are on play action passes. So they can kind of figure out how to communicate in those shotgun passes and what. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you have better line play, I think at least three of those five plays that San Francisco couldn't convert for touchdowns or first downs, crucial first downs, they
Mm-hmm.
would get those. Like
Yeah.
I would think so because the offensive line is going to create the space to get into your flow, get in the rhythm, and it makes a
Mm-hmm.
huge difference. So, alrighty. I think we rambled on long enough about these two teams.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to take this holistically because um, obviously Brock Purdy, last pick in the draft, Mr. Relevant,
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows. The team ends up going to the Super Bowl with like a superstar cast around
Mm-hmm.
him on the offense and defensive line. And then you have Patrick Mahomes, super demon, imperfect team around him, has a couple weapons, um, and they reached the Super Bowl despite like
Mm-hmm.
having all these problems offensively. Do you think there's a right way to build a Super Bowl winning team? And if so, what is that right way?
um I think it comes down to like uh having an elite quarterback is like obviously key piece number one. But I think right after having an elite quarterback, having a strong defense is like the number two most important thing, followed up by pretty much everything else on the offense. Because I'm just thinking about like Super Bowl winners, where it's like, I mean, like the Chiefs have had elite offenses, but like their defense has also been key in making plays. You look at Tom Brady's reign, where yeah, he's kind of made the offense what it was, followed up by having like elite key playmakers on that defense that are able to, keep things playable in terms of like back and forth between teams. And I think we just kind of see that through the last like 20 years pretty easily that an elite quarterback followed up by just an incredible defense, uh, is what leads teams to win Super Bowls.
Yeah, I agree to some extent. I think having an elite defense is important. Um, Getting those crucial like if you think about like 11 possessions a game, offense defense
Mhm.
has it in no magic order. It may be more or less based on
Mhm.
turnovers, right? But if your defense is able to like make crucial stops in like optimal field position for like 4 or 5 of them at minimum, suddenly like the
Mhm.
offense has like 6 or 7 possessions to score. Like maybe you take off one for like their first drive, trying to get a beat on the defense,
Mhm.
and then maybe it's like end of half scenarios for like 1 or 2 of them, like third and fourth
Mhm.
quarters. You're thinking now it's like they have to get touchdowns or field goals on 3 or 4 possessions, and
Mhm.
now suddenly you're looking at like a team has a potential of like 28 points as their maximum amount to hit
Mhm.
if your defense can stop them like in the middle of the game 4 or 5 possessions,
Mhm.
right? Versus if you don't have a good defense, offenses can score like 30 plus points, 40
Mhm.
plus points, whatnot. So just from like a possessions count, extremely important.
Mhm.
But like good defenses can stymie a rhythm of an offense, and that's
Mhm.
gonna drag on to possession after possession after possession. It's gonna have
Mhm.
effect on the game. You saw what San Francisco did to Kansas City the first half. You saw what Kansas City did to San Francisco like for 3 straight possessions. Though that carries momentum into how an offensive play caller thinks and calls the game and
Mhm.
how like players morale goes up. Like that matters. That matters.
Mhm.
And then I think the one thing I would tack on too is a strong running game because if you have a strong running game and you lean on that, you can tire out a great defense
Mhm.
over time, consecutive after
Mhm.
consecutive. I think about like Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, like Christian McCaffrey, how he was getting going in the first half.
Mhm.
Like when the running game was going, you can stop pass rushers a bit
Mhm.
because now like they're not focused on rushing, they're focused on
Mhm.
like gap control, and it's a
Mhm.
different, little bit of a different assignment there. And the running game allows you to run the play action and allows you to be explosive on offense.
Mhm.
So I think I would say the run game is really important because you can
Mhm.
utilize it in a multitude of different ways as well. Um, and I think the important thing is if you do have an elite quarterback like you mentioned, you need to have the coaching structure around him that's sustainable.
Mhm.
So I don't even care if you have a offensive minded coach. We saw that seen this with John Harbaugh. We've seen this with Dan Campbell. Um, we've seen teams like this Sean McDermott. We've seen coaches without an offensive mind like advantage have success deep in the playoffs. And the difference with these teams is they have offensive strength. Like their offensive and defensive coordinators are good, and they have a plan to replace them because rebuilding teams always want to take the next offensive and defensive line.
Mhm.
So having a good structure around that elite quarterback for coaches, and then the GM picking the right talent to support that elite quarterback is really important in my mind. So um, those are 3 things that I know you didn't mention right away,
Mhm.
but things that stand out to me to add on to what you have.
Mhm.
I just think about like how Kansas City and San Francisco are built. Like how long
Mhm.
has Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch been there? Like probably 4 or 5 years. I'd say. Like
Mhm.
Shanahan's case, Lynch has been there. I think a season shorter. And then Spagnuolo has been there for a while. Reed has turned around that team since he got fired from the Eagles. Brett Veach has been there for a while. Um, Even when the Ravens changed GMs, they had the structure to continue to build playoff teams because the coach has been consistent. They
Mhm.
cycle through coordinators and they're still successful. Um, the Bengals have been successful for a sustainable amount of time. The Bills, like that's what the Chargers are trying to build right now. And that's what the
Mhm.
Packers and the Lions are trying to build right now. And I think having the organizational structure is also important.
Mhm.
But I think the overall arching point I have with this question is I don't think it matters what you have at quarterback. I think
Mhm.
like obviously you want the quarterback to be able to like have the
Mhm.
processing. have the footwork, have the arm strength, like minimal arm strength required to get the ball like 40 yards down the field. That's
Mhm.
important. But I think even more important is how you utilize that quarterback, and then that
Mhm.
utilization comes from having a great coaching structure and like talent around him.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
he has options. So um, as a Bears fan going into this, I would rather the Bears keep Fields and try to
Mhm.
add as many receivers around him. So like
Mhm.
if we can get Marvin Harrison Jr., Roma Dunze, Malik Neighbors, like two of those three guys, I'd be ecstatic. And somehow Bowers slips to 9, I would love it.
Mhm.
Um, but I would rather go that route because I look at the fact the quarterback has no team. Everybody loves Fields. Like if you pick Caleb Williams and kind of
Mhm.
restarting that culture a bit, because you don't know what you're
Mhm.
getting with Caleb Williams as far as a culture fit, players have to get in great shape with him. He may be a more talented version of Justin Fields, but you still didn't solve the problem. You
Mhm.
only have DJ Moore. Cole Kmet's a nice option, but you need more than that.
Mhm.
And the Bears have to prove they can create like a coaching structure around that to be
Mhm.
successful. And I don't think fans like on X or like Bleacher Report understand that if you take in Caleb Williams, swapping him with Justin Fields, that suddenly the Bears are a playoff contender. It's possible.
Mhm.
Like Caleb Williams, I think is definitely a more talented passer than Justin Fields,
Mhm.
but that's not enough in this league. Like, don't let Patrick Mahomes fool you. Like, he did have a great structure around him to allow him to become the talent he is, and that's important for like learning and development. So, like, whether it's like Fields, Love, or like Bryce Young, or like CJ Stroud. Like, I think CJ Stroud's situation showed you he's an elite quarterback, yes, but he
Mhm.
had great coaches around him, great surrounding cast around him,
Mhm.
like to help him have the season he did. And because everybody's coming back, that's a sustainable way for the Texans to get deep into the playoffs quickly
Mhm.
because you have everything and all those variables in place, right? So my answer to this question was very long, but I don't think there was a right way.
Mhm.
Wouldn't you agree? There's so many variables to this. Like, I don't think like yes, the elite quarterback helps, but I
Mhm.
I think this season, if any, like showed us like when those quarterbacks get down, like go down. I think we had like a dozen quarterbacks like injured for the year this year. Like,
Yeah.
I think what you have around that matters. a bit.
Yeah. I mean, in the end of the day, though, the best quarterback in the league did win the Super Bowl. So,
Yeah, yeah. My point is not
with
like as long as Mahomes
considerably
is
a
there.
weaker
Yeah,
surrounding cast.
yeah. Offensively, that defense is real though.
Off, yeah.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, that's why I said elite quarterback followed up by elite defense because that's how Brady won. Is how Mahomes has won. Uh, and they have the most combined. Like the two of them have the most rings in the 2000s basically.
but look at their running games though. Their running games have also been strong to help support that too. Because you think about
Yeah.
Like Brady being at his best with the play action game. Like
Mhm.
if he doesn't have that running game, the play action is not as powerful. And now he's forced to
Mhm.
like throw in a shotgun and stuff. And like these players can do it, but it's just a lot harder on them. Like
Mhm.
especially like if you think about like Brady against like those Giants defensive lines, like
Mhm.
how do you tackle like um uh OCU Numura or Justin Tuck? Like if you don't
Mhm.
have a strong running game, would you want
Mhm.
to drop down 50 times without play action because you can't run the ball and then
Mhm.
go like that? So like,
Mhm.
yeah, I hear you. The quarterback definitely matters, for sure. Um,
Mhm.
but I think both those quarterbacks have had great coaching around them and coaching structure. Where like as
Mhm.
a young quarterback, and we're looking at all these teams with potential, like the Falcons. Like the Falcons have all these changes going on, but even if they get a rookie quarterback, if they're not able to develop him properly because of like bad coaching or bad practice, it
Mhm.
won't matter. He won't reach his
Mhm.
ceiling as that elite quarterback. So
Mhm.
um, I think that's important to point out. But your point is taken. We could be all
Mhm.
wrong, and it's just Mahomes is going to pull 10 straight Super Bowls, become the GOAT, and
Mhm.
none of this will matter because all the
Mhm.
rookies drafted won't sniff a hair to Mahomes. We'll see. So
Hmm. Yeah.
I went on a tangent, long topics there, but thank you guys for watching.
Hmm.
You can follow us at our channel on YouTube at a mission, and then our Instagram handle is down below at amon.a.mission. I'll I'm horrible at this, so let's see. There you go. Nice. First try. Of course, I got on the first try. It took me a while. Um, um, but yeah, follow us there. I have tons of content to upload. Perfect time to do it with the Super Bowl over. So we'll have it headed your way. We still haven't decided what we want to do like next week, so we may or may not have an episode there. It's kind of the lull period of the NFL, but I would expect a lot of like draft talk and free agency as we um, catch up on
Yeah.
like who players are coming out in the draft. We're well aware of the
Hmm.
quarterbacks, but still got to do some digging on
Hmm.
position groups. So we'll have some fun content for you then. But till then, peace out.
Peace.